Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and we're going to be talking about lessons in building a sustainable indie game business. So, the indie game industry has evolved dramatically in the last few decades, but despite some fundamental challenges that remain, reaching sustainability is still possible to achieve. So, today we're going to have a deep dive into how one developer has thrived for over 30 years, balancing creativity in business by focusing on shareware games. So we're going to explore the history, some trends, and wrap it all up with some actionable tips to help developers turn their passion into a long-lasting career. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everybody, how's it going? And we're back, and today with us I have Jeff Vogel. Jeff, how's it going? And thanks for being here today.
We're doing all right. Very anxious, but when you run an indie business, you spend a lot of time anxious anyway.
Yes, and I think I have I know why. There's some of that little bit of anxiety, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it in a moment. But first, just a quick introduction here. Jeff is, full-time indie, in particular, shareware developer of working at, and it's your company, Spider Web Software Inc. And that has, there's so many titles that you guys created. We have Evernum series, Nethergate, Exile series, Genforge series, lots and lots of cool, awesome games. And actually right now you have a current project that you're working on and having a lot of activity going on around that. If you would like, please share us a little bit more about what's going on, what's in the trenches happening right now with you guys.
So I'll give you a quick introduction. So we run Spiderweb Software. It's a small indie fantasy role-playing company. We're based in Seattle. It's mainly me, my wife, and a bunch of freelancers. We started in 1994, and so my claim to fame is that I believe I have been working as a full-time indie continuously longer than anybody alive, which it's a small thing to brag about, but it's mine. I have been looking around. I don't think I've found anyone who's done it continuously for longer. And we've written 18 full-length games and a ton of remasters because, like, a game we wrote 20 years ago that's still good, but it often needs a remaster to keep it working and keep it fresh. Our current project right now is we have a Kickstarter running for Vernum 4 Greed and Glory, which is a remaster of a very successful role-playing game we wrote called the Vernum 4, which came out in 2005. So it doesn't really work anymore. So we're going to make it work. And the Kickstarter is doing really well, but it's also, it's a source of anxiety because I got into this job because I'm a stay-at-home. I'm a humble toy maker. I like to sit in my room and, make odd toys for all the little boys and girls. And I'm not a hermit. I have friends. I have activities. I go out and give talks and stuff like that. But on my day-to-day, I just like to sit quietly in my room and create. But when we have a Kickstarter or when we're releasing a product, all of a sudden the world is looking at me, or at least, tens of thousands of the world, which is enough. It makes me fidgety, but baby's got to eat. So I do it every year and a half or so.
Yeah, no, I guess good to, keep on top of, keep yourself on top of your toes or whatever and whatnot. And, and it's probably a good thing to, like you said, stay on top of it and stuff, but it's still a moment in which it's like, oh yeah, this is a little nerve-wracking, but it comes with the territory and it's all good to go from there. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff then going on. And thank you too for giving us like further insight in terms of like, hey, this is how long this has been going on. And that's quite a awesome claim to have. And, and again, we're just really grateful for the opportunity to have you here today. And,
thank you. No, it's fun. I like, I can talk a blue streak about this stuff forever because, It's because indie game development is a very complicated topic. The video game industry is a very complicated topic.
Absolutely.
Plus, then you can get into tedious stories about what it was like back in the day, because running an internet business in 1994 had its own challenges. Convincing anybody that it was possible to run an internet business in 1994.
Well, yeah, and that's like any internet business. Forget games, right? Like,
oh yeah, when in 1997 I wanted to start accepting credit cards to sell my games, and a real challenge with that is trying to convince a bank that I wasn't just a fraudster, that it was in fact possible to turn a business selling things on the internet. That was a months-long process of begging to convince anyone to listen to me and let them know that I wasn't just going to use the money to buy drugs.
Yeah. But it's the truth, folks, right? Like, it's different times and different eras. And I know we're experiencing different times now, but if you really look back, there's always been interesting stages in how things, change. But, today, while we're talking about sustainability and stuff, I mean, that's some of the things I think we're going to be exploring too, because I think it really helps put those things into perspectives and the importance of what fundamentals really have when we're building an indie business and such too. Keep going.
Okay, so the indie business right now is definitely what I would call a stage. We are definitely experiencing quite a stage, and I have my own perspective on this because I've been doing it for 30 years, and so I've seen booms and busts come and go multiple times. So I certainly have a perspective on what the state of the rather dark and challenging state of the games business now, for what it's worth.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, and speaking of perspectives too, I just want to call out one more thing about you is like, not too long ago, you spoke at GDC. It was, and you had a talk, it was, titled Failing to Fail. And I unfortunately didn't get a chance to look at that yet from when you shared it with me, but I can just get a really good sense of what that is and how important it is. And I'm probably, there's going to be some lessons that we can kind of take away from some of the concepts or what you were sharing in that talk. And don't worry, folks, we will include it in the show notes. As I'm sure it's a very good one. And just from the title alone, sounds like something we should all consider or be mindful of the idea of failing. Probably, I'm assuming here, is important. It's a lesson. And if we look at failure from the opposite perspective, it's not going to help us out as much as we might think or be fearful of. So
I'm very proud. If you go to YouTube and search for "failing to fail," it sounds like you're going to post a link. It's a really good talk. I'm very proud of it. I did about 6 years ago, and sort of a business retrospective with lots of advice and thoughts about indie. And maybe in 10 more years, I'll do another one.
Yeah. So lots of cool stuff here. And wait, there's more, because what I want to throw out there to you guys, there's, Jeff has kindly extended an offer. I'm not going to share what it is quite right now, though. So you're going to have to wait to the end. But trust me, I know you're going to want to wait to the end anyways with what we got talking about. But first, before we do that, we got the Q-Box round. And for those of you who aren't familiar, it's just a few random questions I prepared here for Jeff today. So Jeff, are you ready for the Q-Box round?
Sure.
Awesome. All right. Name one thing that motivates you every day.
Babies have to eat. No, I get asked, I've been asked for decades, how do you keep yourself motivated when you work at home? And I always give the same answer, which is fear of losing your house does wonders to focus the mind. I always describe myself as a cold-hearted mercenary. I love this business. I am, driven with a passion to create these games. But at the end of the day, every business has the same business plan, which is babies gotta eat.
Yeah, I love how simple that is and how true and real it is. I think we sometimes forget, and everybody's in their own situation and stuff. But I think that rings true. Like at the end of the day, and we got to think about those things. And so I absolutely love it. Great one right there. Next is, what's the most common mistake you see devs or studios make with their games?
Oh man, I suppose at this point, it's just releasing releasing a game, releasing something into a crowded market. It's the games I see. I right now, what I see is people working incredibly hard to come up with extremely good, high quality, thoughtful product, and just releasing it into a market where, in the end, our business is mining people's free time, and that free time is a limited source. No one ever makes more time, so people are releasing their games into a place where nobody has time to play them, and I think so. In that case, if I had to say, the biggest mistake now is releasing a game where there's just too much stuff similar to it. Like recently, there was I guess it was a cozy games festival, like one of the 87,000 indie games festivals here. There was just cozy games.
Yep.
And the main quality that all cozy games have in common is they take up a lot of time. And there were like 80, 90 games in the festival, and they all looked cool, and they all looked great. And you could all tell they were all works of passion. Nobody has time for that. Nobody has time for 3 cozy games in their life, because the whole point of it is that it just eats your life. There's no room for 80 of them, no matter how good they are. So, and that's how hard the business is right now. It's just that the big mistake is just writing a good game when you didn't know in the future that there would be 80 more of them. Well, okay, it's an unavoidable mistake. It's an understandable mistake, but in the end, that was the mistake.
Yeah. So releasing in a crowded game and everything. In a crowded market. I think one of the key points you call out there too, especially, is if everything is essentially the same, right? Because I think that's because then the maybe potential rebuttal some people might have is like, well, if it stands out, but then it's a matter of, well, how does it stand out and everything else? And if you're not looking at that thing, that diving that deep, then even if you do look at it that way, it could be very, very difficult, more likely than not, to stand out, because if it's all the same, it's just, not to maybe put it bluntly, it's just potentially all noise. More noise.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. It has to stand out. It has to have a hook. It has to have something that jumps out. But like our most recently game came out about 3 or 4 months ago. It's called Geneforge 2 Infestation. It's a remaster of the second game in one of our most popular series. It's really good. Try it out. Steam has refunds. But the day it came out, 81 games released on Steam. And a certain number of them, of course, were just, low effort or hobby projects that weren't going to set the world on fire. But there were 5 games out of that 81 that made it to the top of Steam's new and trending, which means they had real followings. Like my game, which it made quite good money for us, but even then, it couldn't crack new and trending for a couple of days. There were 5 games that day that were so popular that they rocketed to the top of visibility. So how do you stand out in that? Yeah. It's like at a certain point in such a loud crowd, the volume that you have to stand out at becomes outrageous.
Yeah.
The only real secret is I think Steve Martin put it best. Be so good that they can't ignore you. Like a game like Balatro was so addictive that nobody could ignore it, and so that broke out of the pack. And yet I can't tell you that this year 50 games have probably come out that were addictive as Balatro that just disappeared, because attention is finite, time is finite, space on the Steam front page is painfully finite. So get lucky. That's if you're going to ask about my big business advice, getting lucky is extremely strong.
So many good things. Man, I feel like we could have a whole nother conversation, another podcast episode. But no, really great takes there.
But nobody reads books.
I don't know. I got a Kindle recently because I keep reading more. So we'll see. Yeah, but other formats. But yeah, you're right. Not as much anyways. That's for sure.
Keep the flame alive.
Yeah, let's do it. Wow, that's right on brand there for Kindle. All right. Next, but not least, and the staple here on the show is, what game are you playing now?
I'm playing a bunch of games right now. I am so swamped with good games I really want to play. I got a really cheap copy of Kill It With Fire, which is a game about killing spiders. I'm still trying to find the fun in that, but I've heard it ends really strong, so I'm going to stick with it for a while.
All right, nice.
It's though, or spiderweb software, I personally have a great love of spiders, a lifelong fascination with them. Let's see, what else am I playing? I'm playing Core Keeper, which it's like it's Terraria again, but easier and smaller, and it left early access so I could finally play it. It's fine. It's designed to painlessly kill 30 hours of your life, and that's what I need right now. I've been playing UFO 50, which is remarkable, like everyone says. Doesn't seem to be setting the world on fire, but if you care about game design and how to put a game together, I think that a UFO 50, it should be used as a textbook in game design classes. That's everyone in a game design class, instead of buying the professor's $100 book of nonsense, should buy a copy of UFO 50. I hope they use that as the pull quote for their game, but they have real people reviewing it, so they don't need me. God, I want to start Slay the Princess once they do its big expansion. So I got a lot going on. I started playing a game called Unrailed with my wife last night because it's couch co-op.
Oh yeah,
World needs more couch co-op. The I'll give you. Here's a question to ask, and then I'll answer it. What do you, if you're a desperate indie developer and you want to stand out? What's some things you could actually do at this point? What hasn't been mined to death? Couch co-op. Is if you're doing console, is great. Anything for a party, anything you can do casually with your friends where you can just frictionally get it running with your friends is solid gold. Not enough of that.
That's funny you say that. Yeah.
The second thing, and I'll just throw out two, be funny. There's always a market for funny. Funny is hard to do. Not many people can do it. There's been a lot of old shareware remasters that kind of crapped the bed lately, but the remaster of Stanley Parable went great guns. It went crazy with sales because people want funny stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the
okay. I'm gonna try to avoid digressing too much here, but I will definitely second the comment about kind of like the co-op and even like party games too, because I know there was a client I was working with that is doing party games, and from what I was diving into, there was so much demand for that. And I guess recently Nintendo just did another Mario Party version, but otherwise there's very little and very few that are doing it well. And there's huge demands for there. So anyways, I just wanted to say I second that. And yeah, humor. It's funny. Humor and horror have a lot of very similar characteristics that people think would be completely the opposite. But anyways,
good horror
really
is hard.
Yeah.
Good horror is difficult.
Yeah. But I would say so is a really good and effective comedy too. And it's like that.
Comedy is hard. Yeah. Comedy is tough. If you want to do just a bitter loner guy going out and his wife got eaten by crabs, and so he's going to spend 20 hours in your game shooting crabs. Anyone can do that. Yep. But make that game, but make it funny. Here's a start. Have it be crabs. Wait, there was already just recently a game with crabs.
Yeah.
It was like a roguelike. I'm blanking on it, but yeah, it's the crab roguelike that was funny. It looked good. I didn't have time to play it, but if it came out 10 years ago, it would have made $100 million, and now it probably broke even pretty good. Yeah. Then everyone forgot after 2 weeks because that's just what the market's like now.
Okay, so all right,
Another Man's Treasure. Okay, never mind.
Okay. It's all right. It's all right. Look, I mean,
if that's sold on you, Google crab roguelike.
There we go. All right. Well, I thank you for sharing about the games. And man, it looks like not intentionally, we both got a little unrailed. And but hey, let's get right into the conversation. But again, thank you so much for sharing that, what you're doing, your thoughts. And yeah, let's dive deep because we're as I mentioned at the for the intro, folks, we really want to explore some of these lessons, and they're big and important ones too. So to kick things off, Jeff, I mean, as you already said and everything else, you've been in the indie game business, the whole scene, 30 years. It's incredible. And I'm just curious, and we alluded to some of the things earlier, but can you share how you've seen the industry change kind of since you first started and what you think has stayed consistent. Because again, lots of changes over that time, but what's been consistent since that time?
So the indie industry has changed a lot. For example, it's gotten to the point where you can, without irony, call it the indie industry. It's huge. Indie games are just enormous piles of money now, which really, that's the first thing that caught me by surprise. Indie games, you'll get richer than the dreams of avarice writing indie games now. So yeah, that's it. It's grown, and there's an old saying: money changes everything. 15, 20 years from now, it was a very small community. You could have one mailing list with all of the successful indie developers, and we'd talk, and it was very friendly, and it was very small, and it was very comfortable, and people were super nice. And because we kind of had to be, because no one took us seriously, because we couldn't figure out where to sell our games, we couldn't figure out how to sell our games. Then the indie boom hit. God, it's like 15 years ago with Xbox Live and Steam. And all of a sudden, indie games started making a fortune, and everyone started pouring in. And the last time I was at GDC, when I gave a talk, I noticed that when you went to the Microsoft booth, when you went to the Sony booth, all of the games we're putting in the front were indie games. They had a couple of their big AAA titles. So it was like they'd have consoles set up where you could play 20 indie games. And I was like, what the hell? We're like basically the beard for the industry now. Why aren't you bragging about the thing you got like 1,000 people working on? You're bragging about what Joe Weirdo made in his garage with the guy jumping on a cinder block. And that is the thing that never changed about indie games. It is that we are the skunk works for oh God, nobody knows what that word is anymore. We're the R&D for the entire game industry. Like anything that's fresh, anything that's new, anything that's exciting is going to come out of indies. Right now, apparently there's some sort of controversy going on about the new Assassin's Creed game, about it being delayed or this or that or the other thing. Don't ask me anything about it. I don't know. I don't care. It's another Assassin's Creed game. I've played like 3 of them. They were fine. I'm done. The new stuff is being made by us. And the one thing that has not changed about indie is it's the place where passionate dreamers come to be free and be weird and take risks and do stuff. I'm making, like, the games I make are very much a product of my brain. Like nobody else could write a spiderweb software game. Like that exact mix, that exact combination of seasoning, the combination of story, the simplicity, whether you like my games or not, you play one of my games and it's my game. That is what indie develops, like that indie provides, like that sort of communication between a small group of oddballs and you, and that can't ever change. So that's what's changed, but at the same time, what is sort of constant through the whole thing.
Yeah, and I love that too, because I think sometimes and I know this is a big factor for a lot of people, especially with a lot of listeners, is that there's that element of passion and drive that's so important, that regardless of all the talks we have about marketing and business and everything, I mean, without that element, indie isn't what it is and what it has become. And I think you called out great in terms of that consistency, where think about it, it's extremely empowering. There's so many other things it can resonate with others as a whole. And I think this is why we've seen the industry as a whole, especially as it relates to the indie industry, is why it's so prominent and such a figure when you're calling out, wow, the fact that like it is possible for a big commercial success, while it's for an indie, while it's rare or not as common, there's still the possibility compared to before, and that consistency of just how the that level of empowerment that the residents in terms of that drive and passion behind it, I think is a really powerful thing that is important to remember. Because with everything from, even though things can be saturated and everything else, and yes, it's partially because the barriers to entry are much lower, but it's all fueled in a sense from not just from financial gains and such, and bigger picture stuff, but because it's fueled by passion, and it's really nice to have a community in an industry kind of like somewhat based on a concept like that I think we often forget.
Yeah, I think that here in the year of our Lord 2024, like people thirst for authenticity, like someone dying in the desert wants a glass of water.
Yeah.
People can talk to me. I answer my emails. Don't have enough hours in the day to follow all of the forums involved. So if you're listening to this and you're on my forums and you're angry that I don't show up, please forgive me. I'm old. I'm tired. There is only so much of that I can emotionally do. But I appreciate you're there. And, when people email me, I listen. I drop in sometimes and I listen. And people know that I care. You may not like what I like, but I've given my life to it. I only get one life, and I spend it on this.
Yeah.
So, like it or not, I'm a real guy. And people and that's important. And so I think also if you want to be a success as an indie, look for a way that you're communicating something to the player. Like another Crab's Treasure, I'll bring it up. They wanted to make a roguelike with crabs, and they did it, and it was funny and silly, and you really felt like it was made by a person. A lot of indies don't have that. Like recently, there's been this almost comical glut of Vampire Survivors clones. Vampire Survivors really plays like a game that was made by one weird guy. I don't know how many people made the initial release of that game, but it really feels like it came out of someone's brain. And then a lot of indie developers, they said, my passion is I want to write Vampire Survivors. And so they went and did that. And it's certainly an expression of passion. And of course, there's 500 of them now, and 497 of them will fail. But, the passion is there because no one makes an indie game without passion. But if your passion is, I want to make this other guy's thing, then you really have to ask, well, what are you bringing new to it that comes from you? Like Brotato is a game that I absolutely love. It's a Vampire Survivor, very similar to Vampire Survivors, but it's a really new thing that clearly comes from from a vision that's separate from the thing they are like. I don't want to say Brotato's ripped off Vampire Survivors. What I want to say is they are really similar. They are really close, but they're so distinct that they both are saying something to my brain that is different. And that is something also that you really need to read, because the 80 games in the Cozy Games Festival, I can promise you, not all of them said something fresh. Most of them are going to have me punch a tree to make an axe.
Very true. Yeah, no, there's a lot to kind of break down from that and everything. But you're right. It's like even if it's an iteration or spiritual successor or whatever of some other thing, I think that's the thing. There's and you called out to it earlier too. It's like there's a component, there's an element of these games that we're creating that are part of you, but also very distinct. And those elements are so important to have and incorporate. Now, with that said, I want to get into some of this, the idea of like, what are some details in terms of running a long time business, essentially. Maybe we could just put yours a little bit in terms of shareware, but let's maybe apply it with the lens of just an indie game business in general. Because I mean, look, especially with shareware, I mean, running a business based around that sounds like probably a dream for a lot of people. But even just any games, right? So I would say, what are some of the maybe biggest misconceptions that people may have about making a living through, making games? And what's been like, what would you say key to your long-term success?
Oh my God, there's so much, because I've known a million indie devs over the years and talked to them and this and that and here, and I'm not shy about giving my advice when I think that they're driving themselves crazy. And I think the first misconception, the first thing to know is that as a business, you are operating as a legal business in the state you're in, and you therefore have all of the obligations that come with that. You need an accountant. I want to give a GDC talk on this, on just. Okay, I know that you're a weirdo and you were bullied in school and now you have grown butterfly wings and you're going to court the spirit of the muse. That's fine. You still exist in physical space on planet Earth. You must obey the law. You have to pay your taxes. You have to have a payroll. If you're a corporation, do you have to do all the nonsense with that? You need an accountant, and you may not need a regular lawyer, but you need to know how to get one in quickly. Sometimes you may need it quickly. You need to know there are certain legal principles that you need to be very familiar with. You have to know the difference between a copyright, a trademark, and a patent. For example, if you do not know the difference between a copyright and a trademark and a patent, and you are trying to make a living in this business, do yourself a favor. Spend a couple minutes on Google. It will save you some hassle. Let's see, what else? Okay, so the question was what? Okay, the second. I'll go one more. There's that two big ones. The second big one, and this is huge, and I talk to people about this all the time. Internet abuse. If you are making a business on the internet, and if you have a social media, you have opened your attention and your brain open to the entire world. A certain percentage of people in the world are mean, and a certain percentage of people in the world are crazy, and a certain percentage of people in the world have huge amounts of free time. The intersection of those three is non-zero. You are going to be hassled. People are going to be mean to you. People are going to threaten you. People with schizophrenia are going to think you're spying on them. This is the part of life. And this is something I've been going off for decades. I could give a talk on this too. Everyone gets abused on the internet. And not only that, but you should bear in mind, people, the conception of the person who really should really scare you is like an incel troll in his basement who's, steam bombing you or whatever. That's just a crank. There's always cranks. I read something once. I'm not afraid of the person who tells me they're going to kill me. I'm afraid of the person who doesn't tell me they're going to kill you. There are people get killed by the heads of their fan clubs all the time. Well, not all the time, but it happens. You don't know who is going to be weird. You don't know who's going to turn weird. And so my advice that I keep telling you is filter your inputs. You do need feedback from the outside, but you need to filter it. You need to come up with a team of people you trust or a place you trust that you can go to read and get advice. And the other stuff, unless necessary, you got to turn down the volume. You got to shut that stuff out. I talk to Steam developers, and they're really upset about their Steam reviews. Like, not because they're being bombed, but just someone wrote a review they thought was unfair. And my response was the same. Dude, why are you reading your Steam reviews? Why are you looking at that at all? You can't affect it. You think if you stare at the number long enough, it's going to come up? You're just going to drive yourself crazy. And then instead of us sitting at lunch talking about movies, I'm listening to you freak out about this one Steam review that was unfair. Poor baby. Someone gave you an unfair review. Write another game. Stop tormenting yourself. I have a blocker on my web browser that keeps me from going to sites, and I've blocked from going to all of the places that make me upset right now because I'm doing this stupid Kickstarter, which is wonderful and making us a lot of money. Thank you so much, everyone, support you. But it's stressful. I'm sorry, I'm not sleeping. But I have to be on Twitter, which of course drives everyone who's on it insane. The rest of the year, my web browser won't go to Twitter. I'll press a button and it gives me a dead link. I put that in there because I don't need that in my head. I don't go to forums unless I'm really looking for information on a bug. Taylor Swift doesn't read her fan mail. She has people for that, and then they pass along to her the fan mail that she should see. But because if she read her own fan mail and she read something that made her upset, if she's upset enough she can't work for the day, someone loses $10 million. So her inputs are filtered. Filter your own inputs. And if you can't develop the mental fortitude to do that, you're going to have a problem. It may not be a problem that keeps you from working, but it's not going to help.
Yeah. No, that's is so valuable and so helpful. Folks, filter your inputs. And what I'm going to add to that totally relates to this concept, to everything you just shared, because you're right. Once you're putting yourself out there, and you need to, you're opening yourself up too. And if you're not filtering those inputs, it can create a lot of challenges and distractions. And when you have those things, you're not progressing. And the one thing I'll add too, which I think again relates to filtering your inputs, is what I like to call kind of compare and despair. We look at some others that we either want to emulate or be like or whatever else, and if we're saying, look at what they have and I don't. And then again, it's like filter that input. If that's a problem for you, I've done this with myself sometimes. I've seen things and like, unless you're going in with a very specific purpose and reason, like you said, researching like stuff about bugs or whatever. If it's not, and if it's very casual and no plan, just don't do it. Just focus on what matters, because otherwise it's just going to bring you down. And love it. Filter your inputs, folks. So good stuff there.
And one thing sorry, I'll be very quick. And there's one thing, this is advice I've given before, but there's one thing I don't say enough, and it's, as much as possible, kill your ego.
Yeah.
Don't look at the next guy over and waste your time being jealous. Don't look at her and go, why did she get that award and I didn't? Awards are dumb. Awards are popularity contests. Life isn't fair. Someone will get luckier than you and make more money than you with the worst game. The race is long. Just, kill your ego as much as you can and just concentrate on making good work.
Yeah. Humble pie can go a long way, folks. Cool. Well, we've great points there. And I know earlier, which I absolutely love, we really talked about kind of like what's the passion behind the industry, especially with, the indie industry in particular. And I'm just curious too, like, with the idea of passion and kind of the, that creative process, how have you kind of balanced that, with the development of your games, but also with the business demands, let's say, of like marketing and selling your games? I mean, you're in the middle of a Kickstarter now, and now you have this creative element, and now you have to really shift gears. Like, is it a balance? Is it more of a focus at different stages? I mean, how do you go about doing that? Because I know sometimes that's a problem for people when they have to shift gears like that.
Yeah, it's a lot. Especially since our business is so small. My wife is my business manager. I write games, but we both have a million different jobs. And you have to every artist in any field has to develop their process, capital P process. They have to develop the way they make things. Their routine, how much time they spend on this, how much time they spend on that. And so if you're going to succeed, you have to come up with a successful process. And part of that, of course, is at some point spending time on marketing. Marketing is important. Development is important. Business development is important. Resting is important. All of these things come together, and you have to learn how to, how much, when you're stretched so thin running a small business, you have to learn, as it said in the TV show Community, you want to do better than good. You want to do good enough. You have to do enough of everything to survive, but you can't let yourself get so sunk in any one thing. Like, part of it is at some point you got to ship a game, and you're gonna hate it, and you're gonna be angry, and you're gonna see all the flaws, and you're gonna see all the failures. But real artists ship. At the end of the day, you have to ship the game, and somehow you have to get someone to see it. For most people, internet advertising is so expensive and so ineffective that, in the end, you have to make it. Most people are just going to have to write a game so good that, it breaks through. So Balatro is the example that everyone's giving for this year. That was just so good, it was undeniable. And there's a few of those every year. And at this point, that kind of has to be what you're shooting for. You have to really be grabbing lightning in a bottle. Me, I can, to a certain extent, because I've been doing 30 years, I have an established fan base that's loyal, and I'm doing my best, to keep them loyal. I've over the years, I think I've gotten a better idea of what they want, and I really am trying hard to provide that. I really like Vernum 4, our next game. I'm really working hard with decades of feedback on making a game that I really think everyone, including me, is going to be happy with. But I get to start with this base that that I just threw together over the last 30 years of my life. But someone starting out now, God, yeah, it's such a mess. It's such a mess.
Yeah, because I mean, you're right. I mean, I think, and here, this is a funny thing too, because this has come up with me multiple times from different people where, when it comes to, let's say, especially in games and crowded market, and there's a passion drive to do that, but then sometimes they may forget about like, oh, well, who is creating this? What is their history like? And not again from a compare and despair, but it's like if there's a big, long time following of that. There's a lot of other contributing factors to this, and starting from fresh, it's like, a following, a fan base, community, whatever you want to call it, is really important, and then just makes that that much more of a struggle on top of everything else. So it's just really interesting. But again, I like you were calling out to before and everything. Those shifts are going to happen. Those are some of the things that I guess in a way are consistent and fundamental, no matter how you look at things. I mean, here's a great example, and I don't know if anybody is going to know this, but I encourage you to check it out because it's a great example here, I think, which is and Jeff, you might be familiar with this. Napoleon Hill wrote the book. I can't think of the title, of course, now. It's something about, it sounds very gimmicky. It's like, make money smart or something. I'll look it up to find out. But the point is, this book was written back in the 1920s, early America, 1920s, I think 1920s, 30s. And a lot of the principles and concepts in every other, and to use the word everyone, they use the word every man. This is how old this book is. But the concepts and principles in there, if you read it ever, is exactly the same of what we're seeing now, but yet the landscape and everything else changes so dramatically and so much. We think this is different time, different place. No one knows how to navigate this stuff. But if you look at, and just with this example and kind of what you were sharing before, a lot of things are relatively consistent, don't change, but it's our own perception and what we're making of it that make it feel that way, even though it's may not seem the case. And I remember the title now. It was "Think and Grow Rich" by
I'm looking at on the interwebs right now. Lots of stuff doesn't change.
Yeah, and again, it's just really about having that understanding and knowing where you. And I know we're digressing a little bit here, folks, but when you're getting into these shifts as it relates to, doing other things, your marketing, the business side, and the creative process, it just really helps to kind of put things into perspective so you can continue to, move forward. Now, speaking of moving forward, I'm curious too, because you called out some interesting things, and I'm just wanting to know, like, what were some, for you, like, pivotal moments in your journey when you knew you found a viable business model for your games? Because, like you called out to a moment ago, people just starting out, it can be difficult and everything. And is there some maybe indicators or signals that you saw on your journey that maybe others could kind of look at and take? Or I'm sure it's always everybody's journey is going to be unique in their own. But in your case, what were some of those pivotal moments that maybe you can call out to?
When I look back on pivotal moments, it's times when I got lucky meeting the right person and then was smart enough to go with it. Like, so in 1994, I'm writing my very first game, Exile Escape from the Pit, and it's going to come out in shareware, and I'm posting it on Usenet, which is basically the online discussion forum. At the time, the internet was so small it only had one discussion forum. And there was actually like another shareware company that was doing really well, and they wanted to get into publishing, and they wrote me, and so they published my game. And that was I had a shareware publisher in 1995. It's like impossible it's kind of weird and impossible to think about, and it helped us get a start in business, like the lift that gave us. And then because of that, we were able to get a cover in the CD that came with Macworld magazine, because that was back when magazines came with CDs with shareware demos. And when I was holding that magazine in my hands when I bought it at the store, I looked at it and went, okay, this is it. This is a real business now. And just before the indie boom, I met a guy named Joe Lieberman who worked in business marketing. And he looked at my company and said, "Yeah, I think I think we can make each other some money. Let me help you out." And he did. And basically, I was paying basically an agenting fee for stuff he found us, and then he got us into Steam. So we all did very well off of that, but we couldn't have done that on our own. So yeah, we just had. There are times when I look back and I can say, I just got lucky there. I just stumbled on the right person, but I was also paying attention and, always looking for the next place to jump. You always, in this business now, like, doors open and they close. Like the epic free games. There was a brief period of time when people get a whole bunch of money getting in as an epic free game, and then a whole bunch more people got in and got a moderate amount of money being an epic free game. I was one of those, but we got to be an epic free game once, and that was and that was nice. And that door is kind of closing now. That door is closed on us. We got one, we're done. But now we're just looking around for the next door and hoping we find the right person that can help us get through it. But there's fewer doors and they close faster. Everyone's looking for the door now. But that is. Yeah, it's like when I look back, the big, I was making consistent quality work for all that time, but it was, just a lot networking, and I'm terrible at networking because I just like to stay at home. But when I did network, I did get some really lucky breaks.
And I love and I think what really summarizes that well, what you called out to, this great quote, by the way, is I got lucky, but I was paying attention. And I think that does a really good job, like kind of encompassing though, because it's like, look, yeah, a lot of the work and different things, and to look at kind of what those pivotal moments are, they're really in moments where you're just kind of keeping a pulse on things. It doesn't mean you have to like get crazy obsessed with monitoring like trends or who's saying what or following certain people or whatever like that, but it's just, keep that pulse, because that can make all the difference. At least in your case, there are some pretty good examples of how that was, how that ended up happening.
Yeah, no matter what whatever your business is, you do have to pay attention to what's happening in your industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the industry, I mean, I'm look, we've called out to this, we've talked about it as well, but considering how the market has changed. And you've seen it all, right? With platforms like Steam and others, that have come up since or before or whatever. What advice do you have for, indie studios, developers that are really trying to break through to, in today's crowded marketplace? Because wherever like you said, it's about time. But with all this, what's kind of the key things you think could be beneficial for these indies to really break through and stand out?
Let's see. So indie always does best when it is catering to an underserved market. And the hard part is finding that underserved market. For me, I write fantasy role-playing games. I write turn-based, very story-heavy fantasy role-playing games. That is that's a hard sort of game to write. Writing a good game like that is quite challenging compared to some other options, so there's not a lot of that. Like, that's Baldur's Gate 3 could take the world on fire and blow people's minds, because they don't see a lot of it. Like, turn-based story-heavy games, it's not something people do much. I mean, Dragon Age is God of War now, so something else has to step up. With the indie glut, it has been extremely hard to find an underserved market, but they still exist. Like I said earlier, humor co-op games, stuff like that. There's always going to be something, and they go in and out of fashion. The person who's writing a Vampire Survivors clone right now is going to have an extremely hard time. But the person who writes a Vampire Survivors clone in 2035 is going to make some bank.
I absolutely love this because I mean, and it honestly it kind of goes back very loosely to what I shared about that book before, Think and Grow Rich. But it's like these trends, these cycles, they happen again. You'll see it, and we might not see it now, and I'll tell you why, because it's a big period of time that we're kind of talking about, and you know, Jeff, from your perspective, you are able to have that lens because of how involved you've been in it. But you're absolutely right. And why I shared that book earlier is because these things will happen again. So if you're cognizant of, I mean, here's another example I think everybody can probably either relate or understand is Netflix. Look for a while how many IPs they were buying up that were all done in the 80s and everything's retro and like that was a huge concept because they knew it would come back. Another example, bell bottoms, I think, in terms with style of jeans. Those made a comeback for a while. These are all things that are gonna happen. So
nobody needs bell bottoms, man. No, no, that's a mistake. That's I don't want to be the bell bottoms of video games.
No.
The bell bottoms were all. I was around for the first wave of bell bottoms. Bell bottoms are appalling.
But I mean, I did know. I mean, it wasn't very big return, but they did make a return. But the point being is, a lot of these types of things, they cycle, and if you're cognizant and aware of these things, and can pick up on these patterns, I mean, there's lots of opportunities, and that's just one. But I think the main point.
Here's $1 million idea. I'm going to drop a free $1 million idea for.
All right, let's hear it.
Write Warcraft again. Not World of Warcraft. I mean Warcraft, the 1995.
Yeah.
Real-time strategy games are dead. So bring back, like, nobody who's even has heard of StarCraft anymore. StarCraft used to be the biggest thing. It's gone. I mean, I'm sure that some people are still playing it, but it is far fallen out of anything. Write a game that gives the same, that just reskin it. Just rip off OG 1996 Warcraft, add some modern interface stuff, change it enough that Blizzard can't murder you for trademark. That's $1 million game right there. There's not enough of real-time strategies. Games are awesome, and indie people haven't done them well, but they've gotten too small for the big publishers to do. Yeah. So that's my business advice.
All right, sweet. And one thing I'll just want to call out to, and going back to, and I'm sure you'll be in line, but if you disagree, by all means, I want to hear it. When you called out to saying underserved markets, I want to make a point, at least from my perspective, that doesn't necessarily mean markets in high demand. Because I know that, like, hey, let's say like 3x, 4x strategy, grand strategy games, those are typically in higher demand. But that what I think, and again, you tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think one of the main things you're saying when underserved, it's more about how is the value there not as good as what it could be. And I think with your $1 million example, it's like, hey, look, here's something that hasn't really been, there's a market there and something hasn't been served well, and you have the opportunity to surpass that existing value. But I just want to maybe get clarity on that, because I don't want people to think, if this is the case, that an underserved market means a market that's in high demand, because I think there can be some confusion there sometimes.
Yeah, it's you want a market where there is a demand that is not being met, and you need to meet that, man. And that's all business.
Yeah.
In any business, you need to find people who aren't getting what they want. So though I mentioned briefly, and I'll close out on this, because this is it doesn't have to be. But I didn't mention. So there's a new indie game called UFO 50, and it's like the complete cartridge collection for a console that came out in 1990 that you never heard of. So it's 50 games, but they're incredibly varied, and they're all really well designed, and they're all really smart. And I think everyone should play this to understand just how cooked the market is and how saturated the market is, that all of these games are actually pretty good. They all have fresh ideas in them, but it's like $25 and there's 50 of them. Any one of these games I can play, and I can picture someone having this idea and having it be their whole game, and like having their sad little table in the back of the PAX Indie area, going, "Look, I made this card game or whatever," and then UFO 50 just dumps 50 of them. That's how oversaturated and challenged this market is, and how little your new, fresh idea is worth. It's. I feel like it is appropriate to end with a certain degree of despair and hopelessness. I think it is important to remember that failure is always an option. You're always allowed to fail. And if you listen to the voice of the muse and it leads you to ruin, there is still a nobility in that. You tried. You don't have to spend your entire life going, what would have happened if I took the risk? What could have happened? Well, you'll know what would happen when you made the risk. You would be destroyed. That's what happened. But at least you'll know.
Yeah.
And there's value in that.
Yeah. Knowing is a big, big deal. And another way I like to look at the potential is like, when you're putting it that way too, is like when we come across these things like failure and stuff. Another way I like to look at it is sometimes it's just about, it's not necessarily failure. You learned, and now it's about prioritizing what really matters to you now, because life's changing, folks. We talked about that, at least as it relates to the industry. And it's an option, and it's okay. Right. So
yeah. What did you just say that there's not complete failure? Or I'm sorry, I missed that. You said something about like failure not necessarily being complete.
Oh, in terms of like it's not like maybe it's not a complete failure because you come out knowing, and then it could be a matter of perspective of now it's a prioritization in terms of other things that are important or focus of you at that time. I think that's. I'm gonna gently disagree. I'm gonna say that in fact there is such a thing as complete failure. Mm-hmm. I think you should just at some point be allowed to sit alone in a room and stare at the wall and go, "Oh man, I blew it. Oh, let's just not think about the last 2 years. Oh no, I'm done. I'm cooked." This is the best interview I've ever given. I wish I could reverse the order and just have it start out with me being the angel of death. That's. But you know what? You're right. There's definitely going to be a complete failure. But I guess the reason why I look at it or may disagree is because if you don't have a complete failure, let's say, then you're not going to learn. And I think sometimes when we hear or think of that there's people out there that aren't failing, my thing in my head is, when are they going to get blindsided? Because then that's the complete failure. But
well, at least we're living in an environment now where almost everyone is getting a taste of failure and getting a taste of fear. And we just went and created a situation where 14,000 games are coming out on Steam every year. Except I think Steam this year has already hit 14,000. And I don't know. Well, okay, I do know it sucks, but in any consolation, it's still easier to make a living than it is making a living as a musician. Yeah. Oh my God, musicians are toast. If you look at what's going on at Spotify and how mid-list musicians have all stopped making money, everyone's toast.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I'm in the United States right now, our country does not currently know how to make ships. And when you're an international naval power and international trading power, ships are important. You kind of need ships. So if you really have a dream of making an indie game, I would suggest that you consider instead making ships. Because it sucks. You're going to get oil all over your face. You can get injured. You're going to be using a spot welder. You're going to burn yourself. But on the other hand, you will be making something that people actually want. And you know something? Your new roguelike 3D procedurally generated, influenced by Minecraft, influenced by Vampire Survivors, mashup. No, you should consider the possibility that nobody wants that, and that at some point you should bite the bullet and go make ships.
Yeah. No. And you know what? I think it's important. And typically we might not have such a somewhat stark contrast, but let's look at the facts, folks. This is very much the reality of things. And if the way I believe it too is, I'll probably maybe end this on a strategy I used to play BioShock of all things. Is that game scared me quite a bit, and after a while I was like, you know what? I don't like this, but I want to push myself. I know, but to overcome that, I just upgraded the crap out of my wrench and just faced everything full on. And maybe that's, but what I'm saying is, if you know that this, even though as dark as it could seem, and come on, we can't just paint everything in bright, nice pictures, but if we face the reality of it, we're more likely than not to be prepared. And that's why, Jeff, I can't thank you so much for these insights and these different perspectives, because sometimes I think we don't look at it in such a way. And it goes back to what you said early on in the Q box round, baby's got to eat. So if we look at things that way, I think we're going to be probably in a better position to tackle these struggles and everything else than to get blindsided, because no one likes to get blindsided, right? So... Well, Jeff, I can't thank you enough. It's been great. Before we close, and for you to drop some links for people to either reach out, learn more about your games, check out your Kickstarter, of course. What does that offer? You said there's an offer you're extending to our listeners for those who are interested.
Oh, yeah. We're giving away. So our most successful game, our biggest selling game now is GeneForge 1 Mutagen, which is the first game in our GeneForge series that most of what we do is remasters now because we have really good games that are ancient and don't run anymore. But yeah, GeneForge 1 Mutagen, we're giving away 5 copies. I'm not sure how you distribute them, but eventually you'll be given an email address and you can contact us and we answer our email and we'll get you your keys.
Yeah.
It's a good game. We're doing a Kickstarter for Vernum 4 Greed and Glory. There's tons, we have lots of stretch goals. We have lots of back rewards. You can pay enough money. You can contribute ideas to the game, which really, nice. And design some of the game, which really works well. That is a ton of fun. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, it's going to be, and we're making a really cool turn-based indie role-playing game because, Baldur's Gate, you finished Baldur's Gate 3. So, and we're still here.
Awesome. Love it. And again, folks, check out the Kickstarter at the time that this is airing. I believe they will be, Jeff will be, mid-campaign. So please check it out. That will be in the show notes. And also, if you're interested. And also, Kickstarter added a feature where you can keep backing a game after it closes. So if you hear this much later than it airs, you can still top buy. We have weird spiderweb merch, all sorts of crazy stuff that you can still buy, most likely. Awesome. And thank you for that, because I did forget that update, which was, wow, they needed it a long time ago, but hey, it's here now. So good. Take advantage of it. It's great. And then on top of that too, anyone interested in that game, what I would say is you can, this can be in the show notes too. We'll reach out at support at spiderwebsoftware.com. And I would say in the subject line, just put IGM podcast, and then Jeff will know exactly. That's fine. Yep, that's fine. Awesome. So Jeff, thank you. And folks, again, check out spiderwebsoftware.com, the Kickstarter, all that will be in the show notes. And Jeff, thank you for your very, sincere and honest take on this, because, these are all things that we need to hear, whether they sound great or not. We all need to hear it, and can't appreciate your perspective and the value you brought today in this episode. So thanks. Yeah, thank you. That was a lot of fun. Hey, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.